When we think of the Roman Empire's might, we often imagine disciplined legions marching in perfect formation or gladiators clashing under the roar of a Colosseum crowd. But the foundations of that power were built not just on courage and steel, but on wood, rope, and the revolutionary principles of engineering. Behind every successful campaign stood the silent, colossal figures that could shatter walls, sink fleets, and deliver death from afar. They were the war machines. Today, we'll uncover the engineering secrets of the most ingenious and terrifying weapons in Rome's arsenal. Our first machine is the ballista. But to call it a simple weapon would be an understatement. It was the sniper rifle of the ancient world. The name itself comes from the Greek word balein, meaning to throw. But the Romans refined it into a masterpiece of precision and power. During the great sieges, like Caesar's campaign in Gaul, the ballista was not used for blindly bombarding walls. Instead, it was a tool of tactical elimination. Its operators could target specific enemy commanders on the ramparts, disable other siege engines, or create panic by striking with terrifying accuracy from hundreds of yards away. The genius of the ballista lay in its engine, a pair of torsion springs. These weren't coiled metal like modern springs. They were massive bundles of animal sinew or hair, twisted under immense pressure inside a reinforced wooden frame. The Roman engineer, Vitruvius, wrote detailed instructions on their construction, explaining that every part of the machine had to be perfectly proportional to the size of these springs. To fire it, a winch would pull back the arms, twisting the springs even further and storing a colossal amount of potential energy. When the trigger was released, that energy was unleashed in an instant, launching a heavy iron-tipped bolt with enough force to pierce shields, armor, and men alike. The ballista wasn't just a weapon. It was a statement that no enemy was safe, no matter how high their walls or how far away they stood. If the ballista was the sniper's rifle, then the onager was the heavy artillery. Its nickname among the legions was the Wild Donkey, a tribute to the violent kicking motion it made when fired. The onager was designed for a single, brutal purpose: to break things, specifically to break the stone walls of fortified cities that stood in Rome's way. It was a simpler machine than the ballista, but its power was even more terrifying. It consisted of a single, massive wooden arm held down against the tension of one enormous horizontal torsion spring. At the end of the arm was a sling or a bucket, which could hold a projectile weighing as much as a man. To operate it, a team of soldiers would use a large windlass to crank the arm down, loading the spring with an almost unimaginable amount of tension. The entire frame would groan and creak under the strain. When the arm was released, it would fly upwards with incredible violence, stopping abruptly against a thick padded crossbeam. This sudden stop would transfer all of its momentum to the projectile, launching it in a high arc towards its target. The psychological effect was devastating. Defenders would watch in horror as a huge boulder silently climbed into the sky, seeming to hang there for a moment before plummeting down to smash into their fortifications with the force of a modern-day car crash. During the famous siege of Masada, the historian Josephus described how Roman onagers could hurl stones over 400 meters, battering the Jewish defenders into submission. It was blunt, loud, and terrifyingly effective. While the onager broke down walls from a distance, the siege tower, or helepolis, was designed to make walls irrelevant. It was not just a machine, it was a mobile fortress, a wooden monster that brought the battle directly to the enemy's doorstep. Building one was a massive undertaking, often requiring the resources of an entire legion. These towers could stand over 100 feet tall, with multiple floors connected by internal ramps. The entire structure was covered in water-soaked animal hides to protect it from flaming arrows and projectiles. At its base, hidden from view, teams of men or oxen would push the colossal structure slowly but unstoppably toward the city walls. Each level of the tower had a purpose. The lower floors were often filled with archers or smaller artillery, like the ballista, providing covering fire for the assault. The top floor was the most critical. It housed a large hinged drawbridge. Once the tower reached the enemy wall, the drawbridge would be dropped down, creating a direct path for Rome's elite legionaries to pour onto the ramparts and engage the defenders in hand-to-hand combat. To face a siege tower was to know your defenses had failed. It was a symbol of Rome's inexhaustible resources and relentless determination. It showed that if the Romans couldn't break down your walls, they would simply rise above them. But Rome's ambition wasn't limited to land. To become a true empire, it needed to control the Mediterranean Sea. In its early wars against Carthage, a dominant naval power, Rome was at a severe disadvantage. The Romans were soldiers, not sailors. Their solution to this problem was a stroke of brutal, simple genius, the corvus. The name means crow or raven, named for the large, heavy spike on its end that resembled a bird's beak. It was essentially a 36-foot-long boarding bridge attached to the bow of a Roman ship by a swivel. Using a system of pulleys, the bridge could be raised and swung around to face an enemy vessel. When an enemy ship drew near, the Romans would let the corvus crash down onto its deck. The heavy spike would pierce the enemy's planking, locking the two ships together. In that single moment, the naval battle was over, and a land battle began. Rome's superior infantry, the legionaries, would storm across the bridge and overwhelm the Carthaginian sailors, who were no match for them in close-quarters combat. The corvus completely negated Carthage's superior seamanship and naval tactics. It allowed Rome to win decisive victories at sea, secure control of the Mediterranean, and ultimately defeat its greatest rival. The corvus is perhaps the best example of the Roman military mindset. If you cannot win the game by their rules, change the game. The story of Rome is a tale of conquest, law, and culture. But it was machines like these, the ballista, the onager, the siege tower, and the corvus, that made it all possible. They were the physical embodiment of Roman ingenuity. They proved that the empire's greatest weapon was not the sword, but the mind. These engineers and their creations were the true architects of Roman power, turning scientific principles into instruments of destiny. They didn't just win battles, they built the world we inherited. If you enjoyed discovering the brilliant engineering behind Rome's military might, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, may Minerva guide your ingenuity.